cop of Reddit, what criminal actually fascinated you with their criminal skills? Why are 3 of the top 4 posts and 6 of the top 9 deleted? This really ducks up the thread. There was this one guy who tried to rob a gun shop in broad daylight with 11 armed costumers and a cop at the entrance by shooting twice in the air and yelling "Hands up everyone." They found bullets from 5 different guns in his body. He also won a Darwin Award. Couple of idiots tried to steal an ATM, chained it up to the back of an old 1975 Chrysler New Yorker, weren't looking and it rolled into a convenience storefront window. Left the ATM and as the alarms from the store were going off, made off with 50 plus cartons of cigarettes. Got pulled over on a highway cause one of them had to rock a piss. Not a cop, but I remember a neighbor of mine having their bike, or was it BBQ, stolen, then returned the next day, along with an apology note stating that the thief had really needed it for the night, along with several apology tickets to a local sporting event, CFL football, for the family. When they went to the game, the thieves came back and robbed the house. Not a cop, but I always liked this guy. After McNair's arrest, he escaped 3 times from 3 different institutions using various creative methods. On his first attempt he used lip balm to squeeze out of a pair of handcuffs. He escaped a second time by crawling through a ventilation duct. In his last escape from a federal prison in April 2006, he mailed himself out of prison in a crate. I had a guy that was IT for a mid-size company. He set up fake vendor accounts that went to his Google Wallet. He then would make fake invoices for the fake company for software licenses and the company would pay a monthly subscription fee and the guy would pocket it. He never got caught. The scam snowballed to the point if he stopped someone would notice. So he confessed to the CEO and had minimal prison time and had to pay it back. Remember, Brenda from accounting is going to pay whatever is on her desk. Edit. IT and accounting can get together and rob you blind. Keep Brenda and Jed away from each other. A guy in our local jail wanted to escape. Now, our jail is pretty much escape proof if you are behind bars, but not so much if you are a trustee bringing food into the kitchen, or going to court, or going to the hospital, etc. So this guy went to the hospital for a problem and halfway from the doctor's office to the car there was a bathroom in the hallway. He told the guards he had to go. They escort him in. He pees. Then back to jail. He tells this to his girlfriend. She dresses up as a dude, goes to that same bathroom, removes the hockey puck from the urinal and drops a hacksaw blade down the drain and attaches the blade by fishing wire back to the puck. Next time he goes to the hospital he goes to that same urinal. The guards are standing right there, but there is a urinal screen so it looks like he is shaking out the last drop, but in fact is reeling in the blade. Back to the jail. A hacksaw blade isn't enough to get through all the steel in the jail, but it is enough to make a hole in a window where he now went into the business of reeling drugs up from the ground with a fishing line. I'm impressed by the criminal that is stealing all the top posts. You might just want to direct message him. He has a lot to patrol and may not see this post. 2 local guys walked into Canadian Tire and just casually walked out of store with a full-size canoe. Who would ever question that bold move? Got caught when went back in for the oars. My co-worker back in the day used work at a bank. He would copy checks and cash them. He was almost at $1 million when his girlfriend got pissed at him and snitched. He would be sitting on a beach somewhere if it wasn't for her. Lesson people. The only people that should know of your crime are the ones you commit it with. Obligatory not a cop, but I worked on a case where a guy stole a catering truck full of gourmet meat and cheese, sold all of the food to random people at inflated prices, used that money to buy a load of sugar, used the sugar, and then went to rob a Dollar General with the truck, but only after ripping out the refrigeration unit and selling that. This was in one day. I was just impressed at the amount of crime he managed to do in such a small time frame. Not a cop, but look up the Banco Aro robbery in Argentina. That was some fine robbing. They entered the bank from the front door. Everyone on the ground. Demand the bank vault to be open. They get in and close the door. Police arrive and start to negotiate through telephone calls. Negotiation lasts 4 hours as they threaten to kill everyone in the bank. Police finally go in. Enter the vault and it was empty. No money. No people. An hour later they find behind a cabinet a hole in the wall. The hole lead to the sewage system that ended up straight to the river. They put a boat in the sewage and escaped through the river. They got caught because the wife of the gang leader turned him in because of a fight they had. The money never appeared. He broke into Tiffany's at midnight. Does he go for the vault? No. He goes for the chandelier. It's priceless. As he's taking it down, a woman catches him. She tells him to stop. It's her father's business. She's Tiffany. He says no. They make love all night. In the morning, the cops come and he escapes in one of their uniforms. He tells her to meet him in Mexico, but he goes to Canada. He doesn't trust her. Besides, he likes the cold. 30 years later, he gets a postcard. He has a son and he's the chief of police. This is where the story gets interesting. He tells Tiffany to meet him in Paris by the Trocadero. She's been waiting for him all these years. She's never taken another lover. He doesn't care. He doesn't show up. He goes to Berlin. That's where he stashed the chandelier. This thread is like reading declassified JFK murder document. Everything's removed. Kinda the opposite. Genuinely caught a guy after he left his DNA at a scene. The scene? A car. Where he'd left his DNA. From a bite he'd taken out of the victim's Nando's chicken takeaway left in the car. I'm not a cop, but the German extortionist are no funky. German version is way more detailed though, who called himself Dagobert. Scrooge McDuck was a very clever and popular criminal in Germany. There even were merchandise shirts in the 90s with his name, etc. I had a shoplifter hitting the Walmart for TVs. He would go in the store, put a TV in the cart and go to customer service. He would request a refund for the television. To which the customer service employee told him he needed a receipt. He would proceed to get agitated to the point where security would come over and escort him and the duckine TV back to his car. Away he would go. He took 3 local Walmarts for almost 20 TVs. Sometimes it's the simple strategy that's the best. Not an officer, but I did serve on a grand jury for over 4 months. The only time we had a criminal testify was against some of his partners. He was a master at stealing Corvettes. He divulged his entire car stealing scene. From going to dealerships checking out cars and swapping out the key fobs. At one point he, very smugly, explained this one instance where he stole a car from Cleveland, drove it down to Columbus, stole a Corvette and drove it back up to the chop shop. He was clearly impressed with himself and his masterful car stealing skills. Not a cop or anything, but in high school I knew an absolute genius. He was without a doubt the best pickpocket I'd ever met. I've met a few, but instead of stealing I think he's a street magician these days. I always wore this leather jacket and a watch. He managed to take my watch from underneath my sleeve without me ever noticing and then handed it back to me like he'd just found it. Guy's also a great lockpick. He let me into the school's orchestra room after I left my instrument there and the teacher was absent, so we were left with the band class. I needed my cello for a performance I was in the next day and that was the only time I could have gotten it. Guy really saved my ass a few times. I worked at a radio station for a while and the news reporter listened to the police scanner constantly. She told me to come into her office and listen to this chase going down. The cops were on a high-speed chase down back roads following a car thief. This guy was taking these curves and hills at 90 and it was a 5-speed sports car. But eventually he took a sharp curve too fast and flipped the car multiple times into a field. He got out of the car completely unharmed and fled. Stole another truck at a farm and drove it close to his home. Walked to his house and went to bed. The police were shocked at how good of a driver he was being that he was only 17. He was arrested and in his mugshot he had his collar popped up and this smirk on his face like, I'm so frickin' badass right now. I know what he did was wrong and he could have killed himself or someone else, but that mugshot will always stay with me. If he doesn't go into NASCAR, I'll be disappointed. You could have just PM'd me. I don't have a good story in answer to your question. So now this is awkward. My dad was one of the head detectives on the Zodiac killer case for a while. Obviously he was a good criminal because he is still at large. I'm a lawyer, not a cop, but when I was clerking my judge sentenced a dude for unauthorized practice of dentistry. He actually performed quite a few successful procedures before he was caught. I've heard of a guy that used kids to steal BBQ grills because the kids were too young to be charged with theft over 1,000. He'd fix the grills up and remove the serial numbers then sell them. He's also stolen safes and admins, grown dope, you name it. The guy's afraid of puppets yo. Always thought that was weird. Frank Bagnell, Jr. His fraud and impersonation skills were so excellent that he successfully impersonated an airline pilot, a chief of pediatrics, and so on. He was also a master check forger. The movie Catch Me If You Can is based on him. He now lives in Charleston, South Carolina, where he owns a private fraud consulting firm and is a multimillionaire after retiring from working with the feds, of course. I worked in the jail for a short time before working patrol, and as such, I knew quite a few of our clients. A year or two into patrol, about 10 years ago, I am walking to my car which is parked on a city street after a call, and my keys are locked in the car. A client, who I remembered as always being rather funny, comes off his front porch, asks if I need help, and in less than 5 seconds he had my door open in one movement, he and his friends, and I just started laughing. I threw him a fist bump and that was the end. Now I have a whole kit to get into cars for emergencies like babies trapped inside, etc. I have practiced and tried to be good with it. I've also called unknown amounts of tow trucks to help people. I've watched locksmiths work. Nobody held a candle to this guy. Side note, client really cleaned up his life and owns a small but decent mechanic shop now. It's pretty nice to see. About a year ago a guy was selling a year supply of free drink cards for Dutch Bros coffee stand for $500 or trade. At first I didn't know if he stole the cards and a stamp, theft, or simply reproduced the cards, trademark violation fraud. Eventually I set up a meeting and agreed to buy the cards, obviously not letting on that I was a cop. He was surprised to be surrounded by patrol cars to say the least. During my interview with him I learned he had thousands of fully stamped stamp cards and he got them from a friend who got them from a friend who found a trash bag full of them on the side of the road. I was able to corroborate this statement as there were till receipts in the bag from a time before they shredded the stamp cards. All of the involved turned over the remaining 5 or so thousand cards after they gave about 1,000 or 2,000 away to area homeless people. No charges were filed. For clarification, the guy gave a bunch of the cards away prior to being contacted by police. Not a cop. My uncle was shot on Halloween. Guy was dressed as a robber with a striped black and white shirt and ski mask. He had the gun in plain sight, rang the doorbell and said trick or treat and shot my uncle 6 times. I always thought it was pure genius because he had a gun in the open and wore a mask and my uncle willingly opened the door. Not a cop, but when I was in college in the late 90s some guy would stealthily ejaculate on girls that were studying. They would not realize it happened until they felt the semen on their skin or noticed it on their clothes. As far as I know they never caught the guy and my circle of friends could never figure out how a girl would not notice someone yanking it right next to them. So we all referred to him as the stealthy masturbator.